Thank you. I'm Avery. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm going to be talking a bit about the importance of finding your community in STEM. So I'm kind of going to go through my past and how I've got to the point that I am now, and all of the mistakes and successes I've had along the way while trying to figure it out. You can find me on social media at Nuclear Engineer. I'd normally break this into Twitter, Instagram, but as already mentioned, Twitter is at the minute. But I'm sure whenever we find a new platform, I'll be still using this pun. So a little bit about who I am. So I am the vice chair of the IMO3 Pride Network, and I'll talk a little bit about that, what IMO3 is. And until recently, I was the director of student membership for OSTEM Incorporated. I'm currently the annual conference co-chair for OSTEM Incorporated this year, being held in Anaheim, California. And I'm the founder and chair of STEM LGBTQ and U, which is now the UK regional conference for OSTEM Incorporated. I'm also biromantic and demisexual, a transgender man. I'm disabled, so I suffer from severe anxiety and depression, and I'm also autistic. I mention all these, and I like to mention these at the start of any talk I do because they shape how I see the world a lot. All of my experiences that I'll share today are shaped by all of these identities, all intersecting together. And as you can imagine, having this mismatch of identities really does affect how you find your community. So IMO3 Pride, just to put a little plug, you can find more information online. So IMO3 Pride is a voluntary committee trying to get more people and support people who are LGBT in Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining. And OSTEM, the main organisation that I do a lot of volunteering with, stands for Out in STEM, and it's the largest chapter-based LGBT STEM organisation in the world. So we have over 150 student chapters globally that we support and do things like mentoring, annual conference, careers networks, all those kind of things, just so you have that context. So I mentioned a little bit that I'm a recovering nuclear scientist. So I'm currently the Levelling Up Outreach Officer at the University of Birmingham. Now, not that levelling up, nothing to do with the conservative levelling up. This is what the donor of the project called it. If you're watching, Tony, I love the name, definitely love the name, definitely don't like explaining it. So this is a scheme. So I get to run events to help sixth form students decide that science is for them, just targeting those underrepresented groups and showing them that things like chemistry, maths, physics, material science are all really cool subjects and they should come along to do them. So I'm going to talk a bit how I ended up doing this rather than nuclear. To start with, I wanted to do a little bit of a kind of feel about what does community mean to you, since I'm going to be talking a bit about this. So I'm just going to tab out. Definitely see people joining. Oh, responses coming through. Definitely coming out now. Togetherness, working together mentioned, that common standard, like-minded, safe, supportive, lot of support and belonging. Yeah, leave this running by doing. But as you can see, there's definitely that sense of belonging and shared experiences that are super important. And as you can imagine, are super important when you're doing something like STEM. I mentioned this because, as a lot of us in the room will know, STEM is really hard. Having to do science and engineering and tech and all those things is really, really hard. And so if you don't feel like you're part of a kind of community of like-minded people, if you look around and you don't see people like you, it's actually really, really hard to get going. And that was a consistent theme that I found in my life prior to kind of finding my community and really influenced what I did and what I felt like I could do. So a little bit of timeline about my life. So around 2009, I came out as bisexual. I was in my teenage years. I knew that I felt different to everyone. Came out as bisexual to very mixed things. Kids at school were not great, and I did use it as a kind of crutch to go into my book. So it actually got me more interested in science and reading books and stuff like that, because I no longer felt that I kind of had that cool school community around me. I didn't see myself doing sports with all these people, so I kind of hid away, and it did kind of reignite that passion for science, and looking into books and all that kind of things. Then in 2012, I started college, and this is when I thought I was going to be new place, 1,200 students compared to my smaller school. I thought I was going to really find my place. They had an LGBT group there, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to make all these friends. It's going to be great. And then I went, and then I didn't get on with any of them, because it turns out just because you're LGBT doesn't mean you'll like each other. Funny that. So I then continued to really struggle, not understanding my place, not seeing people like me around me, and not knowing what to do. Led to me being diagnosed with anxiety and depression as well. So this is a consistent thing. So we kind of hear that LGBT community has come together and found each other in the past in the face of discrimination, that you can always seek out people like you, that we've had all these underground groups throughout history to find a space. And so it's really upsetting to me as an LGBT person at college to not find like I had that space. So there's a picture of me as things. It was 2012, and that's why we're dressed like that, very emo looking. This was me after my first Pride. So I had my Pride wristband on, and I was still excited to be out, but wasn't quite still comfortable. Continuing with that, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I wasn't sure that science was going to be from me. I was from an area of very low progression to higher education. Not a lot of people I knew went into higher education. They all went into the trades. I'm first generation. Universities, I didn't have anyone to follow in my footsteps. I really didn't know what I was going to do next. So I started working in industry. I knew that I liked computers. I knew that I liked playing computer games, and managed to land myself a tech job. It was like a very entry-level tech job at a defense company that taught me things like programming and made me realize that maybe I could actually do this kind of science thing. So then started my undergraduate degree, following on from that. I wasn't quite sure tech was for me. I thought I really liked physics a little bit more and how the things worked. So applied to do physics. Failed to get onto the physics degree and got a changed course offer for something called nuclear science and materials. And I was like, why not? It sounds kind of cool. It's got nuclear in it. Nuclear sounds cool. It's not necessarily how I recommend you choose your degree, but it worked out for me. So in 2015, I started my degree. And then again, I went to kind of like this LGBT group when I was there. And again, I did not like the LGBT people that were there. I don't know why I thought it was going to happen like a second time. A lot of them were doing things like humanities and stuff and couldn't really understand what my interests were. The first coffee I went to, like they used to have these coffee socials, somebody called me a war criminal because I used to work for Defence Tech. And that kind of really put me off finding people in my community that were going to understand my interests and like me for me. Though there was a little bit of benefits coming to university. So I did realise there were some people out like me out there. So I came to university called something called Access to Birmingham, which is a widening participation scheme, similar to the kind of thing that I get to help children benefit from now. So although I didn't find my LGBT community, I did find people like me from kind of working class backgrounds, from people who didn't know what education was. And we kind of shoved together in a place that I did feel like maybe I could do this higher education thing, and did find some common ground. But I still felt like I was missing something. Jumping on to that same year, I started university. OSTEM, so the Alton STEM charity that I volunteer with, University of Birmingham chapter founded. And as you can imagine, that considering my past experiences, I wasn't really sure about it. But I did start attending. And if you're wondering what changed my mind, who here has done something to impress somebody they wanted to date? Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to impress a girl, so I went along. We've been together almost 8 years now, so it did work out. I did think I took it a little bit farther. I think she just wanted me to go along for the social. I don't think she wanted me to start, being a director of the board or anything like that. But, so kind of finding out that I'm not alone as an LGBT and STEM person, it really gave me that solace that maybe I could exist in this space. So here it's me and my partner campaigning for gender neutral toilets that we got on campus. And I realized I just wasn't alone and there was people like me out there. So here's me going to another LGBT STEM event. I got to go to things like the LGBT Seminar in 2017 for the first time. So I got to meet other people outside the University of Birmingham, which were queer in STEM, which was also incredible. And there was just something else. I really started to click with people because there was something else in common. Not only were we LGBT, we were also massive nerds, and that really helps bring people together. So I started to feel like I really started to belong there. And this need for LGBTQ and STEM specific isn't really new. Although I look quite a lot of the groups that happen over here in the UK do seem quite new, like OSTEM chapter being founded in 2015. I think PRISM was 2018, on the top of my head. It's not a new thing. So Nogglestep, which is now Out to Innovate, was actually founded in 1980 over in the States. So there was definitely that need to find a place where you could belong and be yourself. So going back to my timeline, I started getting really involved with OSTEM. So I was elected chair of the University of Birmingham chapter. And then I attended the annual conference for the first time. So I mentioned that's something I'm co-chair of now. So here's just a photo of the annual conference. So it puts 1,200 LGBTQ and STEM people in a hotel for an entire weekend every year. And this is what propelled me really to keep going with what I was doing. I was really struggling with my degree for lots of different reasons, not feeling like it was for me. And that I had people maybe at the university that I was friends with, but I wasn't going to find anyone like me when I got out into the workplace. I was really scared about that kind of what happens next. So to be able to go across the world and then meet lots of other people like me who were figuring it out and still doing really well, really helped me want to stay in STEM and get really excited about it again. And my grades shot back up. This is also when I finally admitted to myself I was transgender, so getting to meet other people like that. So although that I had developed a few LGBT and STEM friends at the university, I wasn't really being able to explore that transgender identity. It's something I started thinking about as soon as I joined OSTEM and realized that I could do it. Before then, being trans was just something that I read about on Tumblr as a teenager and pretended that I never read about it. And I just never really envisioned it happening for me until I went and met people who were trans and were actually doing really well in their life and realized that could be something that I did. And that's also the same time I started taking hormones, got to access all the joys of private healthcare and trying to fight with the NHS gender clinic system. I'd say one of the most significant strengths to our community is being able to create that safe space and being able to find that kind of experience and somewhere that you can be yourself entirely, authentically. This is actually the picture that I posted on Facebook to come out with. I don't know why I did it like this, but I did. It's one of those things where it seemed like a really good idea at the time. And being able to create a safe space is something that I continue to love to do today. For example, I'm an LGBT mentor at my university, which means I get sent all of the little transgender undergrads. They get sent to me and I get to do things like have coffees and explain the system to them and just really help them progress and create that kind of safe space for them so they can see somebody. And often they don't even want to know what the process is. They've got Google, they know how that works. They just want somebody who can stand in front of them and be like, I've got a job, I've got a partner, I've got friends, I've got all that. And it didn't all just explode when I came out. So it's really nice to be able to do that. So I mentioned that I continued to get, nothing. So then after that, I started getting more and more involved with OSTEM, as I mentioned. So I became regional coordinator for New England and UK, founded the UK Regional Conference. This is where I started to realize I could run groups and run events. Really liked running events and creating these spaces. I love to be behind the scenes running around with a spreadsheet. That is one of my favorite things I've discovered. This is also when IMO3 was founded and I joined as a founding member. I graduated from my bachelor's in 2020, which you can imagine was a really fun time to graduate. It was also when I was finally diagnosed with autism after being pushed by some of my friends that I'd met at OSTEM. And they were like, there's something else going on. I know you've come out as trans, but there's something else that's not clicking. and so found that disability community as well. It's also when I started my master's. Continuing on, I became director of student membership for STEM Incorporated, so I got to support lots of different groups. And this is also one of my favorite things that I discovered that I really like to do is through this community engagement, people gain the power to advocate for their rights and visibility. We have some amazing student chapters, for example, our OSTEM at Florida, who are campaigning against things like DeSantis and all of the horrible things that he's doing. And it felt really good to be in a position where I could help guide them to do these kind of things and made me start thinking about what I actually wanted to do next. I'm vice chair at IMO3 Pride, and then 2022 came and I was supposed to start to do a PhD. And I realized I really hated my subject. Hated is not the wrong word, but I just didn't find it exciting. I was supposed to be doing a PhD in cutting edge materials to go into nuclear fusion reactors and looking at the corrosion resistances of them. And I hated it. I didn't care. I simply did not care. And what I realized is that I loved the university environment. I loved helping people. I loved everything else that I was doing alongside my degree, but not the degree. But while I was still figuring this out, I started working as a research assistant at the university for it was meant to be a 3-month project before I started my PhD, looking at the implementation of reasonable adjustments and doing this EDI work. And I asked the person if they thought I could do a job in EDI, and they went, "If you can't, who can?" So I started really thinking about it, and that meant that I could then use the community that I had been building up around me to figure out what I was doing. So I just tweeted into the void, going, "If anyone got any advice to not start their PhD and do EDI work, please send them my way." Which again is not how I recommend you find a job or what you're going to do with your life, but it worked for me. I got to meet lots of other people through this tweet that reached out, who were people that I'd made connections with through things like LGBT Seminar, all of these events I'd ran, who were really happy to put me in touch with their friends and family to tell me what I wanted to do next. And so I started figuring it out. And then I got my current job, where I get to project manage and do all these kind of events that I would love doing, but they actually pay me to do them now, which is really nice. And I just think there's lots of benefits that I found through my community, through being LGBT in STEM. Like, I have had a good life. I don't mean to show this off as like this is lots of my achievements and stuff, like me being a baton bearer, and I don't mean to show this off. I just still can't believe this is something I get to do. I'm from a really deprived area who didn't have any education things, and I get to travel the world talking about being LGBT in STEM. I get to go to America. I get to raise money for charities. I get to win awards. I just can't believe it's my life. And it's all through that community I found. It's not through my degree, as I've established. Didn't do great at the degree. But it is through all the friends I've made and all the connections I've made and that kind of chosen family that I found by being LGBT in STEM. So yeah, thank you for listening.